Porsche loves to launch 911s. Whether it's rear or four-wheel drive, hard-top, soft-top, normally aspirated, turbocharged, businessman's express or race refugee, the sheer number of different variants can be absolutely dizzying. So let's simplify things. Essentially, there have really only been 3 completely all-new 911 models ever launched. There were the air-cooled versions, which lasted until 1996, then a design with water-cooled engines built over 2 generations from then on, and then this car, the 7th generation so-called 991 series. It may not look much different, but an all-new aluminium steel composite construction, a world-first 7-speed manual gearbox, better packaging, higher quality, a whole raft of efficiency improvements, and yes, more power, mean it's still a force to be reckoned with. For half a century, there have been sports cars, and there's been Porsche's 911. Today, you simply wouldn't design a high-performance model of any kind like this. Engine pitched right back, hung out over the rear wheels, which is probably why, since its launch in 1963, there really has been nothing quite like this car, and probably never will be. Porsche doesn't need to fundamentally change the formula, for in its Cayman model it already has a conventional performance coupe. But it does need to finesse it in the face of increasing competition from increasingly desirable high-performance alternatives from Audi, Jaguar, Maserati and Aston Martin. It does need this car, the 991 Series 911, launched here at the very end of 2011. This is the 7th generation 911, and without doubt the most fundamentally different design since the old air-cooled models. Cars like this one were replaced by more conventional water-cooled engines back in 1996. It's bigger, it's more subtle, more stable, and of course faster than ever before. But dark clouds are gathering over the sports car industry with demands that cars like this should not only be safer, and so potentially heavier, but also ever cleaner and more frugal, leading to things like this car's electric power steering setup. Against this, how can the 911 reclaim an undisputed position as the sharpest driver's tool in Porsche's lineup? And will people like me, who've waited all their lives to own one of these, feel that they've missed the chance to have a real one? A tough brief for the most ambitious 911 Stuttgart has ever made. Let's put it to the test. So, to the 911 experience. Let me tell you how it is. There's no car in the world I get into and feel instantly as ready to confidently drive and drive hard. It could be down to the ideal driving position, the perfectly supportive seat, or the way that all the extremities of the car are so easy to see. Or it could be a combination of all 3, combined with the adrenaline that goes with a drive in any legendary sports car. Adrenaline fired from the moment that you place this car-shaped key into the ignition slot. The engine fires with a guttural roar before settling down into the usual pulsing beat. You're ready to go. Very quickly as it happens, so it's just as well that the brakes, as ever, are brilliant, even if you don't go for the pricey ceramic ones. Now here we're focusing on the first 2 rungs in the 911 performance ladder, the Carrera and the Carrera S. Now both are more powerful and faster than before, despite Carrera buys being offered a flat 6 that's been de-stroked from 3.6 to 3.4 litres. Mind you, it still puts out 350 brake horsepower, that's 5 bhp more than before, and good enough to get the car from rest to 60 in as little as 4.6 seconds. Here I've got the Carrera S that most customers choose. It's still 3.8 litres in size, but now puts out 400 brake horsepower, and that's only 35 bhp less than the old track-specified 911 GT3. It's good enough to make this car very fast indeed. It can get to 60 in a whisker over 4 seconds on the way to a top speed of nearly 190 miles an hour. That's if you specify the transmission I'm using here, a PDK double clutch auto gearbox that most customers will prefer and will want to control with the proper tactile feeling paddle shifters that Porsche now can provide in place of the nasty little steering wheel switches that were all that was available when this transmission was first introduced. Now, it's a 7-speed unit, as is, rather unusually, the manual gearbox option, and that's a world first. Perhaps it would be more accurate, though, to call the stick shift alternative a 6-speeder with an extra overdrive top, because if you leave the car in 7th, even gentle motorway inclines are going to see you changing down. Get used to the system, though, and it operates really well. Changing gear, in fact, is something that 911 owners get quite used to. In an era where we're used to turbo-type engines delivering all of their torque, their pulling power, low down in the rev range, the flat 6 available here is intentionally quite different, delivering its performance in layers. You have to be up at around 3,500 RPM before the car really bucks forward. Then it pulls lustily again between 4,500 and 5,000 revs before reaching a full-blooded crescendo at over 6,500 revs, at which point you're only just starting to exercise everything that this engine has to offer. Hard work? Yes, but it's bloody fun while you're doing it. Which brings me to the aspect of this car that die-hard 911 fans will approach with the most caution: the new electromechanical power steering system. Steering, you see, is sacrosanct to enthusiasts of this car who love the way that the old hydraulic setup got the wheel writhing in your hands throughout the driving experience. All very nice, but all very 90s. Hydraulic systems, you see, milk the engine of power even when you're doing nothing with the steering wheel. Electric setups don't. So Porsche got on and developed the best electric power steering system in the world. No, it doesn't have the leather-stitched wheel jiggling in your hands throughout the driving experience, but then it doesn't feel like you're at the wheel of a PlayStation game either. The response is direct, well-weighted and full of feedback. Thank goodness for that. There are two other really important high-tech developments on this car, and both contribute to the quite astonishing way that it can now go around corners. One reason why a 991 Series 911 can lap the Nürburgring Nordschleife an astonishing 14 seconds quicker than its very capable predecessor. Let's start with PDCC, Porsche Dynamic Chassis Control, standard on this Carrera S and optional on the entry-level Carrera model. It's a roll mitigation system that detects the very moment the car starts to roll when you turn into a corner, eliminating it almost entirely. Hit a bump mid-corner and the car just shrugs it off and continues on as if nothing had happened. It's almost eerie. The other key feature is PTV, Porsche Torque Vectoring, that's also standard on this Carrera S. Now, it uses either a mechanical or an electronically controlled rear differential lock to selectively brake the inside rear wheel through really sharp corners, firing the car onto the next bend like a bullet from a gun. Brilliant. If you owned an old 997 Series 911, you'll already be familiar with the other key electronic driving aid on offer here. That's PASM, Porsche Active Suspension Management. It's an active damping control system able to vary the ride between being really quite supple to being really quite firm via the choice of two options that you control on this switch here, normal and sport. Now, as with the other aids that I've mentioned, it's standard on the Carrera S, optional on the standard Carrera. But owners of both models will need to pay extra if they want to make PASM to the extra cost Sport chassis, which lowers the car by 20 millimeters and gives you a package of aerodynamic aids there to reduce lift and increase downforce. Mind you, there's already plenty of downforce, 880 Newton meters of it, thanks in part to an automatically activating rear spoiler that helpfully alerts police patrols to your speed by coming out at 75 miles an hour before retracting in again when your speed drops below 50 miles an hour. But then this is a car designed to be driven very fast indeed, preferably in this sport mode that creates a more agile engine response and quickens the gear shift change times if you've opted for a PDK auto gearbox like the one I have here. Now, opt as I would for the extra cost Sport Chrono package, which gives you a launch control system if you've got a PDK 911, and also gives you this lovely dash mounted stopwatch. And you've got a system that will allow you to make even better use of the whole sport setup, because it gives you an extra Sport Plus setting that shaves 0.2 seconds off the 0 to 60 time, and also is really specifically designed for circuit use if you're going to be doing track days in your 911. Mind you, I couldn't wait, me being me, to try it on my favourite back road, and I'm guessing that you'll want to do that too. Activate it and all hell breaks loose. Behind you, the dynamic engine mounts, specifically developed originally for the track-orientated GT3 model, switch to their stiffest mode for a tauter and sportier chassis and damping setting. And if you specified all the other high-tech dynamic gadgetry that I've been already mentioning, then all of that will follow suit, as the dynamic chassis control, the torque vectoring system, the active suspension management, even if you specified it, the dynamic lighting system able to adjust itself for speed and conditions, all of it will instantly switch itself into red mist mode, which might still be a touch disappointing were there not also to be a few aural fireworks. Fortunately, there are plenty of those too. All 991 Series 911s have what Porsche engineers call a sound symposer, there to further emphasise the distinctive flat 6 engine note, whenever, but only, when you're in the Sport and Sport Plus modes. Me, I'd want to go even further with the optional sports exhaust system I've got here with its 2 double tailpipes. Tap this centre console button and the engine note goes from barnstorming to ballistic. So as the car tenses itself, every system primed for the challenging road ahead, so do you. But don't infer from all that this can't also be a quiet, long-distance transcontinental express should you need it to be. In fact, the improved refinement is one of the things that first strikes you about this 991 Series 911 model. Something you can enjoy, safe in the knowledge that that wonderful engine roar is just a prod of your right foot away. First things first, you wouldn't mistake this car for anything other than a Porsche 911. It's still the most compact model in its class, the curvy shape and the trademark wide arch wings all present and correct. Perhaps the evolutionary styling undersells just how different this car is than its predecessor. 90% of the ingredients are different after all. Still, 911 buyers tend to be a conservative bunch, and if this evolutionary approach protects the resale values of the old 997 generation, then that's going to make a lot of loyal customers very happy indeed. It's a bigger car with a wider track, 56mm longer, and it's more slippery as well with a 0.29 CD drag factor. It's lighter too, with an aluminium steel composite construction that's made the body up to 25% more torsionally rigid, yet has shaved up to 80 kilograms from the total curb weight. The most obvious changes are at the rear, where the triple slatted engine cover and the slit-like LED rear lights are the clearest departures from the previous model. The front revisions are more subtle, with reshaped, larger side air intakes and repositioned door mirrors. And behind the wheel, well, everything's changed, yet nothing is different. So, as usual, you slide behind the wheel to find a traditionally upright dash, dominated by a large central rev counter flanked by 2 circular dial spaces either side. But look a little closer and the changes start to become evident. For a start, it feels like a bigger car, the windscreen being positioned a touch further away. Then there are the modern touches, the electronic handbrake, and the dial to the right of the rev counter that turns out not to actually be a dial at all, but a high-resolution multifunction screen that can display anything from a sat-nav map to a G-forces meter. The rising centre console design echoes that used in the old Carrera GT supercar, and includes a larger 7-inch colour touchscreen for the Porsche communication management system that controls a vast array of functions. Most importantly, everything is of significantly higher quality than has ever been seen in a 911 before. It's truly now a cabin worthy of a 6-figure supercar. Unlike the Boxster or the Cayman, 911 buyers get a pair of occasional rear seats. And I'd hoped that the 100mm increase in wheelbase that you get in this design might have made them a bit more usable. Sadly not. A slender 6mm increase in legroom means that they remain suitable for children only, though for a family buyer like me, very useful at that. The extra wheelbase does tell, however, when it comes to boot space. Here, as in every 911, located partly under the bonnet. Now, there's 135 litres available here, whether you choose coupe or cabriolet, and that's 30 litres more than before. That's in two-wheel drive models. Bear in mind that if you go for a Carrera 4, then the boot space available in the nose falls to just 105 litres. Either way, I'd suggest that you invest in a tailored Porsche luggage set so that you can make the most of it. Bear in mind also that you get another 150 litres of luggage space behind the rear seats, which are separately foldable to increase total luggage capacity back here to as much as 205 litres. Is a 911 good value for money? Well, it depends on your perspective. There'll always be lesser brands offering sports cars that look similarly quick, but most 911 buyers pay these models only a cursory glance, secure in the knowledge that 911 excellence can be theirs for a considerable saving over the cost of a Maserati, an Aston Martin, even an Audi alternative. Not as much of a saving these days as used to be the case, it must be said. Prices for this 991 Series 911 start at just over the £70,000 mark for the 3.4 litre Carrera and just over the £80,000 mark for this pokier 3.8 litre Carrera S. The good news though is that there's very little extra to find in either case if you want the reassurance of all-wheel drive in the Carrera 4 models. You will need to budget an extra £2,500 if you want the PDK semi-automatic gearbox, and there's an £8,500 premium over this coupe if you want the same engine, the same spec with the cabriolet body style. And of course, throughout a 911's life, there are all kinds of powerful derivatives introduced that you can talk to your dealer about. Everything from Targa body styles to the turbo engine, maybe even the GT2 or GT3 track-ready models. But for many, the purest example of the breed is the most affordable version, the Carrera. In 350 brake horsepower 3.4 litre form, it's targeted plumb into the centre of a group of similarly performing cars that struggle to match either its track heritage or its desirability. You'd save about £5,000 over the cost of a Carrera by opting for a Jaguar XK or a BMW 650i, but there you'd really be buying a sporting Grand Tourer rather than a proper sports car. And the same comment really applies to the kind of Mercedes SL 500 or Maserati GT 4.2 litre V8 that would cost you around £10,000 more. True, a Lotus Evora S would keep you on a 911's tailpipes at a saving around £10,000, but you'd quickly lose that when it came to the Lotus's poorer resale value, and you'd really miss this Porsche's build quality. Okay, so what about rivals to the 400 brake horsepower 3.8 litre Carrera S that we've been testing here? Well, it's clearly been priced against Jaguar's XKR, which costs around the same money. But other than that, and America's brawny Corvette 6.2 litre V8, good value at £50,000, virtually every other comparably performing sports car costs more. So you'll need about £10,000 to £12,000 extra over the cost of this 911 if you want something like a BMW M6 or a Maserati GTS 4.7 V8 or a Aston Martin Vantage V8. and you'll need a scarcely believable £25,000 more to get yourself a comparably performing Mercedes SL 63 AMG. In the coupe lineup we're focusing on here, that leaves only the challenge from four-wheel drive supercars like Audi's R8 and Nissan's GT-R. Both had more power than the 3.8 litre 911 Carrera 4S sent to take them on, but are no faster. And this Porsche sits exactly between the two price-wise, £7,000 dearer than the Nissan, and about £7,000 less than an R8 4.2 FSI. So assuming that you're now up to date with where this 7th generation 911 sits in the marketplace, let's check out the package that it can offer to potential buyers, whether they want Carrera or Carrera S, 2 or 4-wheel drive, coupe or cabriolet. If you're spending this much, it is a little disappointing to have to pay extra for things like a rear wiper, floor mats and cruise control. But the specification of this car has been substantially improved in recent times. So all models get a leather interior, sports seats, automatic 2-zone climate control, bi-xenon headlamps and a 7-inch colour touchscreen for the Porsche communication management system that includes satellite navigation and a 235-watt 9-speaker audio system with MP3 compatibility and an aux interface in the glove box. As you'd want on something of this value, every car leaves the factory with a Porsche vehicle tracking system, which is approved to Thatcham Category 5 standard. And prospective owners can stretch the legs of their new purchases in relative safety with a course at the Porsche Experience Centre at Silverstone. Most 911 Carrera buyers, though, find an extra £10,000 for this S model, and it's easy to see why. The extra cash gets you a fair bit, along with the extra power. After all, really the tools to make the best use of it. So, as standard on the S, you get PASM, Porsche Active Suspension Management, and PTV, Porsche Torque Vectoring with a rear limited slip differential, and a very nice set of 20-inch alloy wheels. Factor in all of these must-haves onto the price of an ordinary Carrera, and you really might as well have thought about an S model anyway. Whichever Carrera you choose, for me there are two other very important pieces of technology to specify. Now the first is the PDCC Porsche Dynamic Chassis Control Active Roll Compensation System with its even more direct steering feedback. It's, I think, one of the most important recent pieces of driving technology. Now if you've got that, then you'll probably also have already specified the active suspension management and the torque vectoring system, in which case you'll also want my other must-have feature, that's the Sport Chrono package. It includes an extra Sport Plus setting, which will instantly put all these dynamic driving features on high alert for when you're ready for a challenging drive. And with PDK models, it also includes a grin-inducing launch control function. What other options need to be on your radar? The lowered sports chassis to go with the PASM suspension management system? Possibly. The steering wheel paddles to go with the PDK semi-automatic gearbox? Certainly. And even though it's not cheap, I'd also want to consider the optional sports exhaust, recognisable by its twin tailpipes that, at the press of a button, bypasses the silencer to give a throatier roar. And when I wasn't listening to that, I'd want to be listening to one of the upgraded audio setups, possibly the 8-channel 445-watt Bose surround system that I've got in here, or even better, the 800-watt Burmester system that will please the strictest audiophiles. Other ways to spend rather a lot more money include the PCCB Porsche ceramic composite brakes, pretty much essential if you're regularly using your car on track days, on the way to which you could be enjoying the redesigned tilt and slide electric sunroof, which now slides over the top of the back of the roof instead of into the roof lining to give the driver and his passenger a bit more headroom. Then there's the Power Steering Plus package, which increases the assistance at lower speeds to help urban drivers, and the PDLS Porsche Dynamic Light System, which is able to light your way around corners and alter the beam to suit different speeds and urban, country or motorway conditions. Oh, and talking about lights, a really nice interior touch is the Light Design package, which bathes the cabin in different shades of tasteful LED. What else? 14 or 18-way adjustable sports seats? an electrically adjustable steering column, keyless entry and go, an upgraded TV tuner, the TPM tyre pressure monitoring system, or the top view video parking assistance setup. If you're a shy retiring type, you may even want to pay extra for the badge delete option. Tick just a few of these extra cost boxes and you can quickly find the price of something like this Carrera S creeping up towards the six-figure mark. Now, one thing you won't have to deliberate about too much is safety. The 911 comes already very well equipped in this respect. 2 full-size bags are deployed in 2 stages depending on the severity of the accident. Then there's the POSIP, Porsche side impact protection system, that incorporates built-in thorax side airbags at the front. Then you've got head airbags built into the door panels and side impact protection in the doors. There are also ISOFIX child seat fastenings, a safety steering column and a rollover protection system that anticipates an impending rollover and automatically activates the head airbags and the seatbelt pretensioners. To ensure that hopefully you'll never need any of this, there are of course all the usual electronic braking and traction aids, including an adaptive brake lighting system that flashes to warn following motorists should you suddenly have to slam on all the anchors. And you get what is almost certainly the very best stability control system in the business, the PSM Porsche Stability Management Setup. Economy and emissions were always pretty strong suits of the 911. But this 991 series model takes things onto a new level with improvements in this respect of up to 16%. The basic efficiency of the direct injection engines, lightweight construction and the car's excellent aerodynamics are the building blocks to which are added other efficiency measures such as low rolling resistance tyres, the electromechanical power steering system and a start-stop setup that cuts the engine when you don't need it, when you're waiting at the lights or when you're stuck in traffic. The PDK semi-automatic gearbox also is a major contributor to improving fuel economy and emissions. In fact, a PDK-equipped Carrera can now achieve 34.4 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle. That's 6 miles to the gallon better than before, and return 194 grams per kilometre of CO2. And that's the first time that any 911 has dipped below the magic 200 grams per kilometre barrier. Now, in the case of the Carrera S, with its 400 brake horsepower 3.8 litre direct injection engine, fuel economy when paired with the optional PDK is improved by 14% or 5 miles to the gallon to create a combined cycle fuel reading of 32.4 mpg, and that's despite a 15 brake horsepower increase in power. That equates to a CO2 reading of 205 grams per kilometre. And to help ordinary owners get close to those kinds of figures on an everyday basis, a gear up change indicator has been added to the dash. Now, Porsche engineers have also developed a rather clever coasting function if you opt for your car with the PDK gearbox, which is able to disconnect the engine from the transmission when the driver comes off the throttle so that the car continues on its way idling with obvious efficiency benefits. It's all very clever, and I can see all the reasons why a PDK gearbox is a better choice for this model. Imagine a top-level racing car these days with a manual gearbox after all. But perhaps I'm old-fashioned, but I still can't help but feel that a manual gearbox is the right choice for such a driver-orientated sports car as this one. And if you agree, then you'll have to accept the fact that fuel economy and CO2 emissions are going to be about 10% worse for this less efficient way of changing gears. What else? Residual values? Well, they're certain to be very strong, particularly on this 991 series model. Some compensation, perhaps, for the fact that Porsche can only do so much to make up for what will be very steep insurance premiums, Group 49 or Group 50. The 911, whether you've a classic model or this 7th generation state-of-the-art supercar, it's an automotive icon that's globally loved, with nearly 750,000 examples sold worldwide over 5 decades, 80% of which are still on the road. Which is why, though in this car Porsche has taken a bigger step forward than any the model line has yet seen, the company hasn't messed with the fundamental formula. Which is why, if like me you've always loved 911s, then you'll love this one. But of course, not every well-heeled sports car buyer is a 911 enthusiast. For such people as these, tempted by Audi R8s, BMW M6s, Maseratis, XKRs and Aston Martins, the 911 had to evolve to become more comfortable, more efficient, more refined, more stable, as well as being faster than before. As a result, Porsche is banking on the fact that the excellence of this car will help to simplify the decision over whether to commit to the substantial outlay involved in buying it. And if nearly 50 years of development have taught us anything, it's that you wouldn't bet against them succeeding in doing just that.